On April 24, 2018, after 4 decades of dead ends and thousands of wasted leads, a tiny squad of fewer than 10 detectives finally slapped cuffs on the Golden State Killer. It was Joseph DeAngelo, a 72-year-old ex-cop who had been living a quiet, unassuming life in the suburbs of Sacramento, California. This monster was responsible for at least 13 murders, 50 rapes, and over 100 burglaries between 1974 and 1986, yet he stayed free for 40 years despite everyone trying to catch him. Armies of detectives chased ghosts while DNA was banked. Suspects were grilled and massive resources were burned in a desperate hunt to track him down. But he wasn't caught by the 400 agents working the streets in the 1970s and 80s. He was taken down by a skeleton crew in 2018. It took fewer than 10 people armed with genetic genealogy, old-school patience, and a relentless, methodical approach to finally close the net. That small unit took DNA from an old crime scene and uploaded it to a public ancestry database to find distant cousins. They painstakingly built family trees backward through the generations and then traced the descendants forward to spot potential matches. They whittled the suspect pool down from millions of people to hundreds, then dozens, until only one name remained: Joseph DeAngelo. Agents set up surveillance on his home and managed to snag a discarded item from his trash can to run a comparison. It was a perfect match. The arrest was made, and the case was solved after 40 years, not by brute force, but by smart, focused science. Now, on day 21 of the Nancy Guthrie disappearance, ABC News reports that the investigation is pivoting from 400 agents down to a specialized task force. While the general public sees this reduction as a sign of giving up, seasoned cold case experts know exactly what is actually happening. Small, agile teams solve the complex mysteries that bloated investigations simply cannot crack. And this shift represents a major strategic breakthrough. Here's how the strategy works and why it is our best shot at solving the case of Nancy Ellen Guthrie, the 84-year-old mother of NBC anchor Savannah Guthrie. She vanished from her residence in Tucson on February 1st. 2026 is the year, and police call it a suspected abduction after finding blood on the porch and a pacemaker that was disconnected at 2:28 a.m. Security cameras were manually disabled during a critical 41-minute window, and for 3 weeks, 400 officers chased every shadow with massive force. They utilized DNA analysis, retail purchase tracking, video surveillance reviews, genetic genealogy, and subpoenaed massive corporate records. They even canvassed local gun shops, but on day 21, insiders confirmed the shift from 400 active searchers to a smaller unit dedicated to long-game detective work. This move does not signal a failure. It signals a precise, calculated change in strategy. To understand why this is good news, you have to understand the chaotic mechanics of how large-scale investigations actually function in the real world. We need to look at how genetic genealogy can pinpoint an abductor, even with contaminated DNA, and identifying which evidence streams are currently yielding results. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell, because this is the breakthrough strategy explained by the experts who wrote the book on it. We are breaking down the exact methodology that will bring Nancy home and catch the culprit, so subscribe now to see how justice actually gets done. That Golden State Killer investigation wasn't a fluke. It demonstrates a core principle that veteran investigators have relied on for decades. Huge immediate response operations serve a very specific short-term purpose. They are designed to run down leads while the trail is hot, interview witnesses before memories fade, and grab evidence before it rots or disappears. However, when that initial blitz doesn't result in handcuffs, and when the leads don't point to one person, keeping that massive machine running becomes a liability. 400 investigators will generate tips and data points much faster than any human team can possibly analyze them. Every single officer is out there chasing tips, conducting interviews, and pulling footage, which produces a relentless fire hose of raw information. The problem is that all that raw data needs to be filed, cross-referenced, and carefully analyzed to find the hidden patterns. When the intel comes in faster than it can be processed, critical connections slip through the cracks because the detectives are simply drowning in volume. Former FBI agent and cold case legend Paul Holes broke this down perfectly after the Golden State Killer arrest when he noted that large teams create too much noise. Everyone is busy running down leads and writing reports, but solving a puzzle this complex requires detecting the faint signal amidst that noise. You have to look for the subtle patterns that only appear when the data is structured correctly, and that requires deep focus and time to think. It demands the ability to review files methodically without the constant distraction of fresh, often irrelevant leads pouring in, which is something a small team can do. A 400-person operation simply cannot operate with that level of clarity. So shifting to a focused task force is standard procedure for a reason. This transition happens because it works, and the tragic murders of the University of Idaho students prove this concept perfectly. 4 students were killed in November of 2022, resulting in a massive FBI response with hundreds of agents, yet weeks went by without a suspect. That massive dragnet generated thousands of leads and endless hours of video, but the breakthrough only came when they switched to methodical analysis. A tiny unit pivoted to focus exclusively on cell phone data analysis rather than having hundreds of people chasing vague theories in every direction. It was a focus group with specific technical expertise, analyzing one single stream of evidence until they understood it completely. They successfully identified thousands of individual cell phones that had pinged towers in the area during the time of the murders. Then they systematically eliminated the devices belonging to victims and neighbors, with alibis crossing the remaining few with vehicle descriptions until they found him. One digital footprint screamed for attention linked directly to a white Hyundai Elantra. The name attached to that registration was none other than Bryan Kohberger. They watched him. They pulled genetic material right out of his family's garbage bin. When they tested it against the evidence, it was a perfect hit. 6 weeks post-tragedy, the handcuffs were on Bryan Kohberger. You do not solve a puzzle like that with an army of 400, but with a tiny squad laser-focused on one thread. That exact precision strategy is where NI's investigation is heading now. History shows that this specific method holds the best winning streak for the tough mysteries where speed failed to deliver answers. Insiders close to the hunt told ABC News exactly why the team size is shrinking. They made it clear that reducing numbers is definitely not about throwing in the towel. It is simply a shift toward the kind of detective work that actually closes the book on nightmares like this one. Those insiders pointed out specific hurdles that kept the massive 400-person operation from making an arrest happen. Fragments of genetic code found at Nye's place are still a mystery, but experts are running them through advanced genealogy tracking right now. Big Tech and the Bureau came up empty on her home security clips, yet the team is still combing through every frame of the neighbor's surveillance tapes. Detectives still have not pinned a specific car to the kidnapping, but they are methodically scanning Ring doorbell archives. Do not mistake these gaps for failure. These are simply obstacles that demand slow, careful grinding rather than a chaotic blitz. The DNA evidence proves exactly why the scalpel works better than the hammer. Sheriff Chris Nanos admitted to NBC News that the biological samples from Nye's home are mixed. That means the evidence contains genetic markers from multiple individuals. Sorting out a mixed cocktail like that takes high-level forensic science to untangle the profiles. Specialists down at a Florida laboratory are currently in the thick of that delicate separation process. We could be looking at a wait of weeks, months, or even a full year, depending on how messy the sample is. But here is the crucial part most folks miss. Even when the DNA is blended and the clock is ticking, genetic genealogy remains a potent weapon. It just demands a steady hand and time. Look at Cece Moore, the expert who has nailed over 200 cold case suspects using this precise playbook. She broke down the mechanics on the Today Show in a way that should give everyone following Nye's story a real reason to believe. When police lift DNA from a scene, their first move is running it against CODIS. That is the FBI database holding over 19 million profiles of convicted felons. Nye's case did not trigger a hit in that system. When the standard database strikes out, detectives pivot to genetic genealogy. They take that genetic code and upload it to public hubs like GED Match, where regular people share their DNA to find roots and long-lost cousins. The brilliance is that the sample does not need a direct twin in the system. The algorithm hunts for distant kin instead. It flags third cousins, fourth cousins, or fifth cousins who share blood with the killer, even if they have zero clue who he is. Experts then construct family trees and reverse pulling from birth certificates, marriage licenses, census rolls, and death notices. They dig through old newspaper stacks and public files. They locate shared grandparents, often going back to the 1800s or early 1900s. Then comes the pivot, where they track the lineage forward through time. They map out every single descendant of those common ancestors. They filter that list down to men who match the suspect's age, live near the crime scene, and fit the profile. Once they spot the prime target, investigators start tailing him. They wait for him to toss a cup or a tissue to grab his DNA. They run that trash against the crime scene evidence. If it hits, the handcuffs come out. This strategy has cracked hundreds of frozen cases. It succeeds where the government database fails. It succeeds even when the genetic profile is incomplete. It works even on those tricky mixed samples once the lab separates them. And make no mistake, this is happening right now in NY's investigation. At this moment, that Florida team is untangling the mixed DNA. Once that is done, even if it takes months, the pure code goes straight into the genealogy cloud. Family lines will be mapped, relatives traced, and the predator will be named. This is not guessing. This is a scientific process with a serious track record. Cece Moore stated that when the DNA quality holds up, this method has a 90% win rate. It is slow, but it delivers. For Nye, this means the biological evidence that looked like a dead end during the chaotic phase is actually our best shot during this focused phase. A smaller unit can actually dedicate real manpower to sitting down with a genealogist. They can pore over family trees and cross-check potential names against the other clues. This demands a level of quiet focus that a giant army running down every hot tip simply cannot maintain. While the lab work spins in the background, detectives are methodically pulling on other threads of evidence too. Sheriff Nanos told NBC News that he has no specific suspect named right now. Some folks heard that and thought the case was dead. Cold case pros heard it and knew the team was doing it right. Leaking a name too early causes a disaster. It tips off the bad guy. It creates tunnel vision where cops fixate on one guy and miss the real clues. It also opens them up to lawsuits if they ruin the wrong person's life. The correct move is to chase every lead separately until they all crash into the same conclusion. When different paths all lead to one specific name, that is, when you have a suspect worth looking at in the daylight. Nye's case has several active leads still churning out data. Each one is running on its own track, and any one of them could be the key that unlocks the truth. You only need one loose thread to unravel the whole mystery. Digital footprints reveal a suspect in Arizona was hunting for specific details about the victim's home and salary from June 2025 to January 2026. Nothing you type into a search bar ever truly disappears because logs capture the exact time, the specific phrases, and the unique digital address. Detectives can seize these detailed histories with a court order. Those unique digital addresses point straight to the internet provider. These companies keep strict ledgers that tie every connection back to a real name, a physical location, and a billing method. It builds an unbreakable chain of evidence connecting a simple query directly to the person paying the bill. If those inquiries originated from a personal residential network or smartphone, the digital trail ends right at the suspect's doorstep. A specialized unit can assign detectives to focus exclusively on peeling back these layers of electronic evidence. They secure the necessary legal papers and work with providers to forge the links one by one. The retail data from the big box store is just as damning. Every single 25-liter Ozark trail bag bought in Arizona from November 2025 through February 2026 left a paper trail. Plastic leaves a name and address, while cash payments are captured by overhead cameras that see everything. The retailer has already handed over their entire sales database to the authorities. Investigators are now free to comb through every receipt, matching shoppers against known facts, to spot anyone whose habits or geography align with the crime. It is a slow and grinding process. They might have to sift through hundreds of sales, but finding just one solid hit is enough to blow the investigation wide open. That unique gun holster caught on the security camera offers another solid lead. Someone had to buy that specific piece of gear. Retailers who deal in firearms and tactical equipment keep meticulous logs. Many places even mandate strict paperwork for buying weapon accessories. This dedicated team is hitting every shop in the state. They are showing clerks images of the item to jog their memories. Detectives are pulling the sales receipts. They identify who bought what and check if those names pop up anywhere else in the file. Retired federal agent Jason Pack broke down exactly why this systematic retail tracking is so effective. You essentially construct a master list. It includes every backpack bought at the superstore, every holster sold, and every related purchase. Then you start connecting the dots. Does a name show up more than once? Did the same person pick up a bag and a gun accessory during the critical window? Does that individual's home base align with the mobile network pings or the internet logs? That is when everything snaps into focus. That intersection of facts is the key to cracking difficult mysteries. It happens when separate clues all lead you to the exact same suspect. When the receipts, the digital footprints, the genetic markers, and the video clips all target a single individual, the evidence becomes insurmountable. There is no way to argue against it. A guilty verdict is all but guaranteed. This focused strategy is engineered specifically to force that undeniable conclusion. Specialized units chase down each lead separately. It involves boring data entry checking lists twice and spotting trends. It is not exactly made for television. It might not grab the front page, but it is the grunt work that catches killers. Meanwhile, the tangible clues are still in play. The initial glove discovered 2 miles from the victim's house held genetic material that ruled out the boyfriend and the family. That biological sample is currently running through ancestry databases. Search teams have also bagged several other gloves from the vicinity. Labs are still testing the items. If any of them share a genetic match with the first, find it proves the killer was shedding evidence while on the run. If those fabrics hold latent prints that were missed during the first scan, modern forensic methods can often pull rich detail from textured materials even after they have been out in the weather. It demands high-tech chemical treatments that are slow, but they can yield gold. The roadblocks set up 3 weeks near the crime scene suggest police are sweeping the area grid by grid. It is not a sign of panic. It is a calculated hunt for proof. Compact units can scour the terrain inch by inch, logging every discovery and protecting the evidence trail so nothing slips through. Massive groups often rush to cover territory, which increases the risk of stepping right over tiny clues that could solve the whole thing. The neighborhood security cameras hold thousands of hours of video. When the probe was at its peak size, officers scanned the clips for low-hanging fruit like readable tags or perfect shots of a face. Now that the team is smaller and more focused, they can watch those same tapes with a fresh perspective. They stop looking for the obvious and start hunting for habits. Which cars show up over and over on those streets in late January? Does a particular sedan tap the brakes every time it passes the victim's driveway? Are there strange cars lurking in the dark that do not live on the block? Spotting these trends means watching the video on a loop, logging every ride and cataloging descriptions. They check those lists against who actually lives there. It is tedious, but it highlights cars that looked innocent at first glance, yet become suspicious once you see the pattern. This deliberate pace opens the door for new perspectives. Detectives who sat out the massive 400-person raid can look at the case without bias. Out, they often catch subtle clues the first team overlooked because they were focused on different targets. Paul Holes, the expert on frozen cases, says this fresh eyes concept is exactly what took down the Golden State Killer. The cops who chased that phantom for years had locked in ideas about his identity, his hideout, and his history. Those old assumptions blinded them. When the new squad stepped in, they ignored the rumors and just let the genetics guide them to the truth. Detachment is a powerful tool because it lets detectives spot suspects who don't fit the initial theory, and that same clarity is now benefiting Nancy's investigation. Shifting to a leaner squad introduces agents who can look at the facts with fresh eyes, free from the biases that naturally form during the frantic first days of a search. Let's tackle the big concern that is keeping everyone up at night. Does reducing the headcount imply that the police are throwing in the towel on Nancy Not a Chance? This streamlined unit, dedicated to her file, will likely comprise 15 to 25 detectives sorted into specific roles. We are not talking about 15 to 25 random badges pulled from patrol. These are hand-picked experts selected because their particular skills match the unique puzzle pieces of this mystery. For the genetic genealogy section, expect 2 or 3 agents working hand-in-glove with external ancestry specialists. Their job is to manage the lab results, keeping a close watch on the schedule for separating and testing the biological markers. They also ensure the smooth flow of information between the scientists and the family tree researchers, getting everything ready to identify a suspect the second a match pops up. This group stays in contact every single day with the facility in Florida that is currently handling the complex, mixed genetic samples. They constantly demand progress reports. Their main goal is to make sure Nancy's evidence never gets shoved to the bottom of the pile by other urgent matters. These officers act as the link to the researchers who are standing by, ready to start building family lineages as soon as a viable genetic profile is isolated. On the cyber front, the digital forensics unit will likely have 3 or 4 wizards dedicated to tracing IP addresses, pinging cell towers, and combing through web history and emails. They collaborate with tech giants and internet providers to secure records via court orders. Then they hunt for hidden trends buried within that mountain of data. They construct a minute-by-minute log of every digital footprint left before and after Nancy vanished. It is not uncommon for this squad to devote weeks to following just one connection across various networks. They peel back layers of VPN masking to pinpoint the exact phone or laptop used to type specific queries into a search engine. That level of granular analysis demands a quiet laser-like focus that simply cannot exist in the noisy confusion of a large-scale manhunt. The retail squad will probably consist of 2 or 3 detectives methodically checking receipts from big-box stores like Walmart firearms dealers and other local shops. They create massive spreadsheets of potentially significant items bought in the area. Then they check the shoppers against their suspect list and knock on doors if a transaction looks suspicious. For video analysis, a team of 2 or 3 pros will keep scrutinizing doorbell videos, traffic feeds, and any other security tapes they can find. They utilize cutting-edge software to sharpen blurry images. They also look for repeating routes taken by cars in the area. They catalog every single automobile spotted near Nancy's vicinity during the critical hours. The Central Command unit will likely feature 5 to 7 veteran investigators who hold the entire picture in their heads. They act as the bridge between all the other specialized branches. They spot where different clues intersect. They decide which tips are worth chasing immediately and draft the arrest warrants when the pieces finally fit together. One dedicated logistics officer will manage the master database, guaranteeing that every team member sees the latest intel in real time. This person tracks the schedule and stops 2 people from doing the same job. A structure of 15 to 25 people is something they can keep up indefinitely. This crew can stay locked onto Nancy's file for months or even years if that is what it takes. They won't be distracted by hundreds of dead-end tips all at once. They are systematically working through the avenues that actually promise answers. And most importantly, the Federal Bureau of Investigation is not going anywhere. Federal assets are still backing this play with high-tech labs, deep databases, and niche experts whenever the locals need a hand. Moving to a smaller task force does not mean the feds are pulling out. It means their power is being applied with surgical precision instead of blunt force. This shift also gives the detectives a chance to sleep and keep their minds sharp. When you have 400 people on the ground, everyone is pulling double shifts. Exhaustion inevitably causes errors. Slip-ups can ruin a prosecution if proof gets tainted or if the legal rules aren't followed to the letter. A compact team working normal hours produces a much higher standard of investigative work over the long haul. The agents are well rested, they mess up less. They catch the subtle clues that a burnout victim would walk right past. Retired FBI negotiator Rich Frankel broke it down for ABC News. He noted that after 2 weeks, you simply have to switch to a staffing level that you can actually maintain. This is not a cold case. Far from it. It is a file that is graduating to the kind of serious police work that actually solves hard mysteries. Taking it slow also bulletproofs the future trial. Defense lawyers love to hunt for technical screw-ups, broken chains of custody, and lazy shortcuts. When you have an army of cops rushing to find a lead, things get messy. A focused squad working deliberately builds a case that won't fall apart in court. Every item is logged correctly. Every judge's order is drafted perfectly. Every rule is obeyed without exception. That is how you build a file that withstands a defense attorney's attacks and puts the bad guy in prison. Many of the biggest wins in recent criminal history happened only after the massive search parties went home and the specialized units took over. Look at the Kristen Smart tragedy in California for proof. She vanished in 1996 from the Cal Poly San Luis Obispo campus. There was a huge initial search, tons of leads, and many interrogations, but no handcuffs. For 25 years, nobody could crack it. Then in 2020, a tiny group of local deputies and feds decided to build a case from scratch against Paul Flores, the student last seen walking with her. That compact unit went back and grilled witnesses, again some for the third or fourth round. Fresh eyes unearthed critical details that previous detectives drowning in a sea of tips had completely overlooked. By applying 21st century forensics to decades-old clues, they constructed a watertight timeline of Flores' lies and locations. 2021 saw the handcuffs finally slap onto Paul Flores for murder, while his father Ruben went down for helping hide the body. It took a staggering 25 years, but the gears of justice finally began to grind forward for Kristen. A lean, mean task force gets results where armies fail. Just look at how the Grim Sleeper mystery was unraveled in Los Angeles. That predator, Lonnie Franklin Jr., stole the lives of at least 10 women between 1985 and 2007. Giant dragnets in the 80s and 2000s missed him entirely until a tiny squad in 2010 tried a clever family DNA trick. A partial genetic match to his son led them straight to the father ending Franklin's reign of terror with an arrest. A quarter-century mystery evaporated thanks to a small team's smart science and relentless focus. The proof is in the history books. Michelle Martinko died in Iowa in 1979. But justice only arrived in 2018 when two pros worked the genealogy angle. When April Tinsley was taken in Indiana in 1988, the story was the same. Massive searches gathered the hay, but genealogy found the needle in 2018. Small teams crack these codes by dissecting the hoard of evidence that the big operations gather, and NY's case fits this profile perfectly. The evidence locker is bursting with DNA samples, digital footprints, physical items, receipts, and hours of security video. That army of 400 officers did the heavy lifting of collection. Now the elite unit will sift through it all until the pieces fit. However, this New York investigation has a secret weapon that those cold cases of the past never possessed. The entire world is watching and talking. The Pima County Sheriff fielded over 31,000 calls in just 18 days. While plenty of those were just wild guesses hidden in the noise, were genuine gems of intel that demand a second look. The dedicated team thrives on this data, as they list everyone who bought a specific bag, or Googled NY's address, or whose car passed a traffic camera. They can cross-reference those hard facts against the tip line. If a caller flagged a creepy neighbor back in February and he pops up in the database, a meaningless tip suddenly cracks the case wide open. The 911 overload is fixed. Operators are now filtering the flood, only passing on solid leads about places or faces. Cutting through the static ensures that only the most vital leads make it to the detectives. The sheer volume of tips proves that the public is still locked in. Everyone is deeply invested in seeing this solved. They just want to do their part. The world is watching closely. That kind of relentless scrutiny puts a heavy weight on the suspect. They don't get a moment to relax or hope this will be swept under the rug. Every update is a warning that the police are closing in. Every headline twists the knife of anxiety, and stress makes criminals sloppy. They start talking to the wrong people. They might return to the scene of the crime or doom scroll for news about themselves, leaving fresh digital tracks. The specialized task force is lying in wait to pounce the moment that slip-up happens. They are watching the wires, ready to strike as soon as a window of opportunity opens. For Savannah Guthrie and her family, grasping this strategy offers the one thing the last 3 weeks of madness destroyed genuine hope. This isn't wishful thinking. It is confidence based on a playbook that has solved hundreds of nightmares just like this one. At first, hearing that 400 badges are leaving the street sounds like a retreat. But then the experts explain the reality of the Golden State Killer wasn't caught by a battalion, but by a handful of researchers. The Idaho tragedy was closed by a tight circle of detectives, and genetic tracing hits the mark 90% of the time if the sample is good. The process works. It is a marathon, not a sprint, but this case has every ingredient needed to cross the finish line. Lab technicians are processing DNA while experts trace IP addresses through the web. Credit card records are building a paper trail, and cameras are revealing patterns. Each line of inquiry stands on its own. Any one of these paths could lead to the suspect. The team only needs to be right once. The mindset shifts from praying for a miracle tonight to accepting the slow, hard grind of real investigation. But that grind gets results where a blitz fails. Savannah can return to her life knowing pros are working her mother's case the right way. The burden of maintaining a massive, ineffective circus has finally been lifted. Now the goal is precision rather than speed, a lesson that Annie and Cameron are coming to understand as well. The hunt isn't over, it is just shifting gears into a much higher probability of success. The family can help by keeping the detectives fed with details about daily routines, friends, and personal history that might shed light on the mystery, all while keeping the story alive in the media. Trusting the system is vital, even though the wait for genetic genealogy results is a brutal test of endurance. Sitting tight for months while science does its work requires a patience that feels impossible when a mother is missing. The only other choice is sitting on our hands, hoping for a standard database match that will never arrive. Advanced forensic genealogy is the real key to cracking this identity. We have to be patient so the science can do its job. While that clock ticks, other leads are still paying off. Digital tracking pushes forward. Store records are being pulled. Video review is ramping up. A break could happen tomorrow, next week, or maybe next month, or the DNA labs might nail our suspect in 6 months. Not knowing is absolute torture, but this process works. And Nancy needs her daily meds. Her heart device was shut off. Every second counts. Every detective on this case feels that pressure. This specialized unit isn't dragging their feet because of apathy. They are moving deliberately because that is how you get answers. Speed causes errors. Errors kill investigations. Being thorough safeguards the integrity of the inquiry while boosting the odds of catching and convicting this guy. The individual who spent 8 months plotting Nancy's kidnapping is betting on the cops quitting. They expect the public to lose interest. They are banking on this freezing over. They are dead wrong. Moving to a leaner team doesn't mean it's over. It means we are entering the phase most likely to get results. To the person who wasted 244 days stalking Nancy's address and tracking Savannah's income, the one who memorized the layout of her land, who bought that specific hiking bag and the unique gun holder, the one who prowled the streets at night, who ran a 41-minute mission to snatch an 84-year-old lady from her sanctuary. You slipped up. You dropped DNA on a glove found 2 miles down the road. That genetic material is running through the system right this second. Experts are connecting the dots. Once the lab work finishes, those family connections will point straight to you. You search things on Google from your house or your phone. Those queries left a digital trail. Internet providers keep logs of who owns what account. Judges are signing off on orders. They are linking that IP address directly to your real name. You bought supplies at Walmart. You used a card if you were sloppy. Caught on camera if you paid with bills. Receipts are forever. Police are combing through every sale. Your shopping trip will be uncovered. You picked up a rare holster. Gun stores have paperwork. Outdoor shops track the weird stuff people buy. A grid search is happening. They will spot your buy. You showed up on doorbells all through late January. Your car might be lurking in the back even when the lens was looking at you. They are stitching together every clip from the area. They will tag your ride. You left electronic breadcrumbs everywhere. Digital data you thought was safe is being pulled via court order. Cyber experts are mapping your web history from before and after she vanished. Every single one of these paths is separate, but they all lead to your door. And when they meet, when the genealogy, the web tracking, the store logs, and the video all scream the same name, you will have nowhere to hide. You prepped for 8 months. You were cautious at the house. You had on a face covering and gloves. You turned off the cams, but you got lazy with the tech. The searches you believed were secret created a permanent paper trail. The stuff you bought thinking you were a ghost created receipts. The genetic sample you left thinking a mix would save you is being unraveled in a lab. You messed up in one major way. You failed to realize that small squads crack cases that big circuses can't. When 400 cops were making noise, you felt comfortable in the mess. Now that the experts are quietly tearing apart the clues, the trap is shutting. Genealogists are drawing your family tree this very moment. Tech specialists are hunting down your IP right now. Financial detectives are checking your spending right now. Video analysts are spotting your car right now. Just one of these threads will expose you. Once it does, the rest will pile on proof to ensure you never walk free. This team plays the long game. They are precise. They are locked in, and they are coming for you. If this story hit home for you, if you think Nancy Guthrie needs to come home, if you get that real justice takes time but never fails to show up, hit subscribe. Ring the bell because when the labs name the guy, when the digital trail reveals a suspect, when the receipts match the DNA, we will be the first to tell you, this isn't finished. This is the winning move. Small units close files using science that works. The Golden State Killer tactic is proven. It cracked a 40-year-old mystery. It is going to solve this 21-day-old nightmare. Hit that subscribe button because Nancy Guthrie is coming home. The predator who took her is going to be unmasked. True justice is a slow burn when you build it to last, but it is inevitable. And when it arrives, when the handcuffs click, when the net finally tightens, you're going to want a front row seat. This operation isn't falling apart. It is sharpening its aim, and precision delivers the kind of answers that disorder never could. Justice is not always a thunderclap. Often it is the quiet, relentless hum of a marathon. When the sirens fade and the crowds of searchers thin, the world often mistakes silence for surrender. But in the search for Nancy Guthrie, we learn a profound truth. Precision outlasts brute force. The transition from a 400-man army to a specialized task force isn't a retreat. It is the sharpening of a blade. Like the detectives who spent decades hunting the Golden State Killer, today's investigators know that truth lives in the smallest details. It lives in the mixed whisper of a DNA strand, the digital ghost of a midnight Google search, and the paper trail of a simple store receipt. The lesson is clear. In our modern world, no sanctuary is truly violated in total darkness. We leave pieces of ourselves behind biological breadcrumbs and electronic echoes that science eventually untangles. To those who commit harm, the net is not breaking, it is tightening. To the families waiting in the agonizing silence, do not mistake a smaller circle for a fading heart. True justice is a slow burn built to withstand the fires of any defense. It is patient, it is scientific, and it is inevitable. Because even after the loudest storm, it is the quietest light that brings the dawn.